Okay, so this is really cool. I started reading a new book, right? And like I'm only on page like 15, 16, and I've already had like 3 different connections to other things that I've learned about both psychology and brain development, as well as habits and motivation. And I wanted to I found the first one and I wanted to stop and like discuss it, but then I saw something else that interested me and I kept reading, and more stuff started to click. Um, I think I need to stop and like kind of go over it. Um, so let me see here. So this book is basically about what I've read so far. It's called On Task by David Badre, and it's about how we get things done, how our brain gets things done. And there's a disconnect. So it was seen that our prefrontal cortex had our frontal lobe. Hold on. Let me get the right area down. I don't want to our prefrontal cortex and frontal lobe has no function. Doctors would use lobotomies and stuff to either stimulate or what's the other word? Basically just numb that certain areas of the brain down on test animals. And if they saw like an impedance or like if it fucked with their function of being able to do things, basic things, then they would see it as a necessary part of the brain. When they did that to the frontal cortex and the frontal lobe, nothing happened. So doctors and neuroscientists started saying that it had nothing, it wasn't important. So they started doing lobotomies, and that's essentially where they just take out that part of the brain. And people seemed fine. A lot of people died. A lot of people died even 2 years after the surgery, and many people's lives were affected in horrible ways. When you mess with someone's prefrontal cortex, they seem normal. They seem completely normal. They have normal function. They're intelligent. They're fluent in conversation, and they seem well off. But then when they go home, their lives turn into hell. Like, it turns horrible. They often develop personality traits that are seen as, like, even in normal healthy people, as obnoxious and undesirable. And they would develop these personality traits, and it would cause them to lose marriages, it would cause them to lose jobs, they would be disorganized, they wouldn't be able to live through basic areas in life. They would quite frequently be unable to like prepare big dinners. They would be unable to do really basic things. And what I found interesting was later they go on to talk about how just because we know something, and that's another thing, they were trying to have therapy for these patients after they realized that this was an issue. What they did was they had little cards with different shapes, different colors, and stuff and different numbers on them. So they were told to sort them. They took a group of healthy people and a group of the prefrontal or the frontal lobe patients. The frontal lobe patients. Okay, so the healthy people were able to figure it out pretty quickly, you know? The instructor would tell them incorrect when they sorted it in the wrong way, so they would change the way they sorted it. And when they finally heard correct, they would keep going like that. Then they would change it again later, and then they would adapt. The prefrontal cortex people, they got it, the first one, pretty quickly, as quickly as the healthy people. But then when the instructor told them incorrect and changed the rules without telling them, they couldn't adapt. They continued doing it the old way that they knew. And they were frustrating themselves. They were continuously hearing incorrect, and they knew why. Like, the instructors asked them why they were doing it this certain way, and after the test, and you could see the growing frustration on them. They repeated the rules back, and they were continually doing the wrong thing. They were sorting them the wrong way. Another test was done where they gave the prefrontal cortex patients, or the frontal cortex patients, the frontal lobe patients, lists of things to do around London. And they were not able to do any of the errands properly. One was able to get all of them done, but lost a lot of points due to breaking rules, such as when he was finding out the weather for yesterday. He ended up not paying for the newspaper and got chased down by the shopkeeper. There were multiple other things, like going to a grocery store. Rather than going to the same grocery store where you can get both of the things, they would go to different ones, right? So they were horribly inefficient at everything. And yeah. Also, in one study, or in one case, a patient was told that he was diagnosed with, I forgot what it was, but he was told not to drink any water from any water fountains, any bottles, anything. Like, a couple minutes after the thing, he was found drinking water from a water fountain. The person walked up to him and asked, "Hey, what was the rule? Like, why are you doing this? You shouldn't be doing this." And the patient recited the exact rule back to him, much like a child when the mom's like, "Hey, don't touch that outlet." And then the kid's like, "Okay," touches outlet. And so what my point in saying all this is, there's something in between knowing what to do and having the desire to do it. So just because you know what you want to do and you have the desire to do it, doesn't show that you can do it. There has to be a clear means to that goal. And this might seem obvious to some people, but I think it's really cool because it's another way of looking at what we think is an obvious, like, common sense, like, pattern, a common sense subject. But, like, it's a really different way of kind of looking at it. And so these frontal lobe patients, they would have sections of their brain taken out. And because the brain is so very complicated and neuroplasticity, I don't know. It's very neuroplastic, so it can change and adapt. And if you remove part of the brain over years, you can develop it. Certain areas, you can develop it, and it can be built. That same function can be built into another part of the brain, and you can adapt and go back to how you were before. But it will take some time, like a decent amount of time, and it's only for some functions and that have been recorded so far. It could extend well past that, but that's all we've recorded so far. And it's the same case in a lot of these patients, but their lives just, it's sad. They get divorced, remarried, lose their jobs, do pyramid money making schemes, they go through a lot. They know what to do. They know not to do it. So they should, they could, or they want to, but they don't. And that relates to a Jim Rohn speech or a Jim Rohn lecture thing that I was watching. It's like 4 hours long. He was speaking about how if you could, if you should, and if you don't, that's disaster. If you could, should, and you won't, that's accumulated disaster. And I don't know, I just thought it was a cool little connection between two things that I've learned. There were some other things as well. I don't quite remember exactly what they were. I just remembered the spark in my mind. I was like, holy shit, like I just discovered something. That's what I was saying. I'm not sure if I uploaded the video yet, but in another one of my videos I was talking about this exact situation where it's like, holy shit, that was just another, I made the padlock example, or the combination lock example, where there's 6 digits, and you could have 5 unlocked, but the 6th one's not unlocked. Say this is the lock that is holding the door to success. Are you going to give up on that final number, or are you going to keep searching for the number? Right? And I feel like I've just unlocked another number in that combination when you get these little things. It's cool because it's a perspective it's a perspective change and a paradigm shift. And by developing different paradigms and ideas, by developing your viewpoints and getting other perspectives, you're finding different numbers on that lock to success. It's really cool, and I really highly recommend the pursuit of it because it feels amazingly fulfilling. I'm about to run out of time on the recording. I still need to clear out room on my phone, but yeah, I just kind of wanted to go over this. I thought it was really interesting. I'm going to keep reading it, and I'll go over the book later in a little bit more depth. Yeah, guys, stay strong. Keep at it.